And we're live. All right, welcome everybody as you're coming in. We'll start officially at 8 o'clock and enjoy Chris's playing for now. We'll get ready for our evening. Thank you for joining. See some people coming in. The next few minutes just to let everybody come in and kind of get settled, and we'll get started right at 8. That's on my phone as well. Okay. All right, I see Pete Duvall and Pete Nelson. Welcome. Welcome, Mom and Dad, Catherine Schneider, Arthur Schneider. Our speakers and readers are watching with us as well. We'll give everybody some time to come in. And we'll take some time just to get ready before 8 o'clock. We'll start straight at 8. Please enjoy Chris's playing. All right. So if you'd like to share the video can be found at the top of our Facebook page. So if you go to our Facebook page, FUMFA, Poets and Writers Live, if you scroll down, the video should be basically the first thing that you see on our timeline. If you already RSVP'd that you're going to the event, you should have received a notification that the live stream began. And then click that notification to bring you directly to this live stream. And you can go ahead and share it to your Facebook page. You can go ahead and share it to your timeline from there. And if anybody needs any help with that, certainly we can help, and perhaps somebody in the chat can give you some advice too. Great. Good to see you, Sarah. Brian Jackson. We're happy to have this tonight and to all share our memories and really honor Kim. We'll officially get started in about 2 minutes. All right, I'm going to share our stream to 1 or 2 pages while we're getting started here. You can come on in and just enjoy Chris's playing. All right. Okay. So I'm going to share this to a few pages while we're getting started. Okay. We'll get started in just about a minute. All right. Thanks so much, Chris. Sounds great.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. So it's officially 8 o'clock. Welcome to everyone who could join us tonight. This is a very special event that we have tonight. And let's get started. Welcome to an FUMFA Poets and Writers Live special event, remembering and celebrating Dr. Kim Bridgford, memorial and celebration of the life, poetry, and legacy of Kim Bridgford, our beloved professor, mentor, director, and friend, an absolutely masterful poet, an incredible woman. Tonight's speakers from the FUMFA community, Poetry by the Sea, and beyond will be sharing memories, readings, and poems by Kim, and more. The speakers are myself, Anna M. Evans, Molly Mellinger, April Booker, Annabelle Moseley, Laura Marie Marciano, Sally Nacker, Nicole Caruso Garcia, Wendy Sloan, Colin Halloran, Barbara Crooker, Julie Kane, and Holly Brigham. Brittany Hill was not able to join us tonight, but she will be sharing something separately on our page, so you can see that later. Chris is going to go ahead and share with us a bit about Kim.
Thanks. Kim Suzanne Bridgford passed away peacefully on Sunday, June 28th, after a brief battle with cancer. Kim was born August 8th, 1959 in Coal Valley, Illinois, and received her BA and MFA from the University of Iowa, the latter from the prestigious Iowa Writers' Workshop, and her PhD was from the University of Illinois. She married Pete Duvall in 1989, and they had one son, Nick. Kim was an award-winning poet, professor, arts administrator, editor, fiction writer, and literary critic. She taught at Fairfield University in Fairfield, Connecticut, and at Westchester University in Westchester, Pennsylvania, where she also served as director of the Westchester University Poetry Center. She founded and directed Poetry by the Sea, a global conference for formal poets held annually in Madison, Connecticut. She was founder and editor-in-chief of Mezzo Cammin, an online journal of formal poetry by women, in the Mezzo Cammin Women Poets Timeline Project, the world's largest database of women poets. She authored 10 books of poetry and has been published in many other venues. She was known nationally as a leader of the New Formalism movement in poetry and has been called America's First Lady of Form.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. And I'm going to go ahead and speak for you first. I'm going to share with you first. Okay, so let's get started. If you were a student of Dr. Kim Bridgford's, and even more so, if you were her mentee, you knew that she knew you and that she could see inside your spirit. Like every great teacher, she nurtured what was yearning to grow inside you, even if you didn't know it was there. From the time I was a preteen, I wrote songs and poems and hid them away in journals, computer files, and sketchbooks. When I took my first class as an undergraduate student at Fairfield University with Kim, I remember how profoundly she encouraged my poetry and identified specific inclinations within me that I didn't yet know myself. It was such a powerful and revelatory experience that I added English creative writing as a second major and chose her as my advisor. After I graduated, I did my MFA in the inaugural cohort of the Fairfield University Master of Fine Arts to continue as her disciple and to be her mentee as many times as they allowed me to, which I ended up doing. In those years, in many classes, workshops, and personal private meetings and emails with her discussing my poetry, she did for me what I believe she did for many of her students. She told me for the first time that I was a poet, that being a poet was something real, and that I could definitely have poems published in literary journals, and that I could one day publish my own manuscript. She told me that my voice was worthy, and that people in the world wanted and needed what I could create. Kim encouraged me as an individual in my particular style, voice, and strengths. She encouraged my faith-based poetry especially. This was incredibly meaningful to me, because before her telling me this, I never thought anyone would want to read such poems. I believe my religious poems to this day because of her. I believe in them because of her, and they are a cornerstone of my writing. As broadly known and loved as she was, and as many wonderful people as there were in her life, she knew me and my poetic heart intimately. For her incredible accomplishments as a poet and professor, and for her seemingly effortless wisdom, style, and grace. She was a goddess to me, someone who I admired so much that when she walked in the room, she could take my breath away. And yet, for the way she knew me, for the way that she loved, nurtured, and inspired me on an individual level, I called her my poet mother. That life-giving warmth was always there, whether I was sitting next to her or reading her emails to me. You may know that in late November, my first book was published. Kim had been my manuscript reviewer, and there was not a poem in there that had not been encouraged and commented upon by her. I sent her a copy as soon as I received my author copies, and this was her response to me. Thank you so much for sending me your beautiful book. I always knew you had this book in your soul, and now here it is in my hands. It is gorgeous. Kim, I hope you can hear us and feel all the love we have for you tonight. This is just part of the community that you have brought together through your beautiful life. I'd like to read a few of Kim's poems. These are my favorites, and I think each one of them has a special message for us tonight. The first one is called Poetry Cheese, and it's from Undone. It's a bit funny, actually, so it'll maybe help me dry my tears a bit. So this is called Poetry Cheese. It starts with a quote from W.H. Auden. A poet's hope to be like some valley cheese, local but prized everywhere. And here's her poem. It is a villanelle. People should want their poetry like cheese. On pizzas, on their sandwiches, with wine. In supermarkets, you can make the case. For poetry, the villanelles like breeze. For parties, long free verse to eat alone. People should want their poetry like cheese. Like Velveeta, poetry will squeeze its feelings in a burst and a saltine. In supermarkets, you can make the case. Creative writers, English PhDs, will package poems like farmers from Wisconsin. People should want their poetry like cheese. Finally, there'll be a need to advertise. Readings will appear on television. In supermarkets, you can make the case. More slim volumes, more anthologies, some well-made chapbooks for the impulse line. People should want their poetry like cheese. In supermarkets, you can make the case. Tried to give it a little Kim cadence, a little bit. All right, the second poem I'm going to read by Kim is called The Trail. This is from her book, Takeout. All of these poems are based on fortune cookie fortunes. So this poem is called The Trail. Oh, maybe my favorite of the favorites. The fortune cookie fortune, which begins the poem, says, do not follow where the path may lead. Go where there is no path and leave a trail. And here's the poem. We tend to think of life as two extremes, the well-worn path or else the Amazon. The one cliched with other people's dreams, the other huge, impenetrable, and green. But how about the path that zags and zigs, unknown to you and yet you're not afraid? Occasionally a person in the twigs calls out like thatchwork crafted out of shade. Throw out your lonely tasting medicine and look around. Sometimes you'll find a song, and dusk, like heaven's multicolored thought, will fall. On other nights, it's interaction, what people share with you of right and wrong, that tells you what you are and what you're not. I'd like to share another poem from this book, Takeout. It's called The Seed. The fortune cookie fortune that starts off this one says, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And here's the poem. At first, we turn our backs on this small seed and wonder how we'll take another breath. It's hard to find the goodness in a death. We stand in lines of black and sob our need. Where is the place that opens up to us? The heaven stairs to the miraculous and makes us happy in our waves of gloom, where in our seedlessness is room for one that brings us happiness to measure, to match our loss, equal or greater treasure. The dirt we rub between our fingers will be indiscriminate in what to pull a life from. Worm, a bit of tree, a flower. We have to be as open to life's power. And actually, that's all I'm going to share with you tonight. And thank you very much for listening. And please enjoy what the other speakers have to share.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Evans, and I first met Kim Bridgford at Westchester at the Poetry Conference in 2008. I think you're going to hear a lot of stories like Katie's about Kim because that's who she was. I also feel like I was one of the younger poets, younger female poets especially, that she supported and promoted. Beginning with when she became director of the conference, she delegated the management of the Timeline project to me, which I was very honored by. And then when she was unfairly removed from that position at Westchester, and she had the vision to start the Poetry by the Sea conference, she kind of made me her right-hand woman. She was the person with all the ideas, and I just tried to help her make it happen. I want to share an anecdote about Kim. When I was writing my second book, which was my book about the Titanic, I was at a writer's retreat, and I shared every poem with her. I emailed her them as soon as she was done so she could see the poems, the book, as it was starting to develop. And one day she emailed me quite diffidently, as she would, and said, you know, I think this book would benefit from a crown of sonnets to put it all together. And I'd never written a crown of sonnets, but, you know, honestly, if Kim asked me to do something, I would do it. So I sat down and I wrote a crown of sonnets in a day, which I was just on a total sonnet high from doing that. I sent it to Kim. She loved it. She published it in Mezzo Cammin. And of course, when the book came out, she wrote a beautiful blurb for it because she always had time to do that for anyone. I love her and I miss her so much. And I'm going to plan on carrying on her work as much as I can. I want to read a couple of poems by Kim and one of mine. The first poem I want to read is from Human Interest. It's called Telling It, and it's a mirror sonnet. And I remember when I read it the first time, I said, wow, can you do that? And of course you can. And of course, I also copied it and wrote one myself because I always imitated Kim. Telling it. The way she's telling it, it seems not true. The way that horror can so often do. The way that she was tired, the way she cried, the way he kindly offered her a ride. The way 10 years passed, the way she learned a swinging light bulb meant that he returned. The way her soul was chained and starved and beaten. One moment she was lost and then forgotten. The way that she emerged in blinking light, and there was the world, not wrong or right, but waiting, like all time, for what was next. She would reveal the bareness of her facts, the children lost, the years, and in plain sight, the way she lived like this, just down the street. The way she lived like this, just down the street, the children lost, the years, and in plain sight. She would reveal the bareness of her facts, but waiting, like all time, for what was next. There was the world, not wrong or right, the way that she emerged in blinking light. One moment she was lost and then forgotten. The way her soul was chained and starved and beaten. A swinging light bulb meant that he returned. The way 10 years passed, the way she learned. The way he kindly offered her a ride. The way that she was tired, the way she cried. The way that horror can so often do. The way she's telling it, it seems not true. Kim and I were both borderline obsessed with Sylvia Plath. And so I want to read a poem from her book, A Crown for Ted and Sylvia. And I've chosen the poem Sylvia Plath's paper dolls, for a very good reason. Kim was a great observer in her poetry. She either wrote persona poems, which were very minutely observed, or she wrote from a position of observation. But this poem, Kim is in this poem, and that makes it very special to me. Sylvia Plath's paper dolls. If Sylvia's paper dolls were to play with mine, it would be crazy. Each change in an idea would be narrated by rule maker Sylvia. That would be the only way to break a line. My dolls were lovely too. I used their tabs to hold on tight, to turn my back on terror. By that, I mean, of course, potential error. I like to think that Sylvia's mad libs of poems were what I too was trying to say. My paper dolls are not in museums, but lost to history, burned or turned to dust. I remember when Sylvia, still ordinary, created who she was through paper scraps. That's how we terrorize ourselves. Cuts, snips. I want to end with the villanelle that I wrote for Kim the day before she died. I'm hoping I can make it through. Why? For Kim. You always think your heroines won't die. Ignore the subtle signs she's getting older. She slips or stumbles, and you don't ask why, because she's still the woman whose words fly like cardinals. There's no one brighter, bolder. You always think your heroines can't die. Tried like a witch, you never saw her cry. You fought beside her as her loyal soldier, your pen, her sword. No need for reasons why. She built a world with open arms and high ideals, and people came. You wish you told her you thought your heroines would never die, and she was one. Is it too late to try to cast a spell of words and love to hold her? And if you can't, insist on knowing why. But no, don't make her sacrifice a lie. Be stoic like her, everybody's shoulder. You always think your heroines won't die. Why here and now? Why her? Oh God, just why? I'd like to thank Lady Schneider for pulling this together. I'm going to listen to you all with so much love in my heart for Kim. And Kim, I love you.
But Kim,
Molly, can you hear me?
yes. Could
Oh,
you?
right.
You could
Okay, so we just had a momentary audio issue. Okay, but we can hear you now.
Okay, again.
Okay, sometimes it just takes a moment for the lag. Okay, so
Okay.
all right, I'm going to leave now, and I can hear you now. It's totally fine. Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, I was a student, an undergraduate student of Kim's. I'm a little shaken. I'm nervous about this because there's just no way to do her justice as a person, as a writer, and as a mentor. She was a very specific type of professor, I think, in that she just was such a, again, like I was saying, the brightness that she had around her, and she just brought all the students who wanted to be led into it. So I'm going to start with a poem by her called The Tree of Life, which I suppose is appropriate, ironic. So I'll start. The Tree of Life. They didn't eat of me. They ate the fruit that dangled with a snake made resolute to tempt the world. They didn't eat of me, yet I would offer immortality. It's shocking, such a preferable choice, and yet they listen to a writhing voice. For once you eat of me, you'll be like God. I taste just like the lining of a cloud, and like the sun, and like the shining planets. The angels feast with airy smiles, for it's their life, all recognition recognized, and all things holy now made undisguised. The only thing I cannot do is die. I'm told it tastes like ash, or a goodbye. I can't believe that we have to say goodbye to Kim. I was always waiting unconsciously and internally for the day when I could show Kim my first book, the experience that Katie's describing. I would have wanted my parents to read it, my friends to read it, but most especially Kim. I'm going to read a poem by Donald Justice, who I think served Kim as a mentor the way she served me as a mentor. I think she was proud to follow in his example the way I was proud to attempt to follow in hers. This poem is, in the case that I've purchased it, is from the collected poems, and it's called The Wall. The wall surrounding them they never saw, the angels often. Angels were as common as birds or butterflies, but they looked more human. As long as the wings were furled, they felt no awe. Beasts, too, were friendly. They could find no flaw in all of Eden. This was the first omen. The second was the dream, which woke the woman. She dreamed she saw the lion sharpen his claw. As for the fruit, it had no taste at all. They had been warned of what was bound to happen. They had been told of something called the world. They had been told and told about the wall. They saw it now. The gate was standing open. As they advanced, the giant wings unfurled. The last poem I'm going to read is my own. I wrote this after finding out about Kim's passing. Sorry, I'm just crying into my lots of snot. Anyway, I wrote this about finding out that she had passed, and it was based on, let me just find it quickly. A quote when I was doing some research trying to choose the best poems to read tonight. This was from an interview that she did where the interviewer asked, "What made you want to be a writer?" And Kim said, "Magic." That was from 2013. And it also, I want to just tell a quick story about Kim. When I was in class with her, as an undergraduate, I think it was capstone, a piece of paper fell under the table, and I went to get it and stood up under the table and smashed my head really hard. And it ended up that I had a concussion after that. So the light was painful for me. And Kim had on a coat that I associate now with her, this furry coat, and she kind of draped it over me so that the light wasn't bothering me so much. And that's that compassion and maternalism, I guess, is something that I will always associate with her. So it's called Kim. No embalming could make me see her as cold. They were taking her away to the Midwest, the siblings and son who'd never see her old. All left of her here was a tightening in my chest. She couldn't be cold, even dead, because in life she was like a fire around which we all warmed our hands. The trembling freshmen, the graduate students, she was free with her patience and gentle coaxing toward written wonderlands. And besides, against the cold, she wore a long, fabulous fur. In class once, I hit my head and the light became an ache, so she draped her fur over me, in the hot dark, the room a blur. When class was over, it was like emerging from her, coming awake. No one cold would keep secret she was dying till the last day. It hurts to picture so formidable a woman in hospice, in such pain. Oh, Kim, I would have given you a fur to cover your eyes if you'd stay. I suppose, like any magical creature, we had you for a melody, no refrain. Okay. Love you, Kim. Thanks, guys.
Hi, my name is April, and I first met Dr. Kim Bridgford my sophomore year at Fairfield University. And I could not wait to take class with her because I had just heard stories from everybody and such amazing things, and none of them were true. She was so much bigger than anybody could have possibly described her, and so much better. Nothing you could say about her does justice to the woman that is Kim Bridgford. So the first class I took with her, one of the first prompts we had was to write an essay about a mentor. And I chose to write about my high school creative writing teacher. The essay was titled, "I'll Never Ever Forget You." And I wrote, "There's a special bond that can form with a creative writing teacher if you allow it to. More than anyone, she knows your secrets, your struggles, your hopes, your aspirations, and she doesn't tell a soul. And if you're anything like my teacher, she not only accepts you, but embraces you for it." And as we worked together more intimately over the years, I learned this was even more true of Dr. Bridgford. And I glad I had the opportunity to tell her so in an email at one point. In her honor, I'd like to share one of her poems. I went through so many books and so many choices, and then I stumbled upon a poem that was published in Valparaiso Poetry Review, aptly titled "Remembrance," and I knew this had to be the one that I shared. The past is nothing but lost remembrance. We sift through hands that want to set things right. We want to give our lives significance, and perhaps we can, the blazing utterance we see now with the gift of second sight. Yet the past is nothing but lost remembrance, not facts. Don't count on a continuance of scenes, unholy hands, words played at night. We want to give our lives significance. We want to make sense of circumstance, but the memories shift and we can't get them quite. The past is nothing but lost remembrance. These lips and hands are our inheritance. These are the only gift we hold outright. We want to give our lives significance. The present is the saving brilliance in small bits of extinguishable light. The past is nothing but lost remembrance. We want to give our lives significance. The life of Kim Bridgford, no doubt, is so filled with significance, and that's what made me want to choose this poem. The relationships that she formed with each of us speaking here today are so unique, yet have such common threads of love and care and wanting to be able to bring us to work, bring out our best work, and the projects that she has put out into the world, such as the Mesocommune Women's Project, Poets Timeline Project, and the Mesocommune Journal, and Poetry by the Sea. Everything that she has done has shown the significance of Kim's life, not only to those who were so beyond blessed to not only know her, but be mentored by her and be loved by her, but to so many women who will eventually be part of the Timeline Project that so tragically never got a chance to meet her, but will know her, and through all that, she will never die. And I believe that she is still out there in the world looking down on all of us and will continue to live on through all of that work. So, Sorry, I need my light. I was my junior year. We worked on the 10th anniversary issue of Dogwood together, and I worked with her and Brittany Moseley on the poetry side and for putting the book together. And it was an experience unlike no other that got me an internship in publishing and having more writing and led to an independent study with her, which was unbelievable. And during that independent study, one day after we went through all of my work, there was a box in the corner of her room, and she said that she had a surprise for me, and that the delivery for Dogwood issues had been delivered that day, and she was waiting until I got there to open them, and that I was the only student that had been there during the summer when they were delivered. And I remember her opening the box like a kid at Christmas, carefully, and handing me a copy of the book before she picked it up herself. And we went through the book just to make sure there were no printing errors and everything was perfect. And that time we bonded so much, and it meant so much to me that I chose to close with a poem that we selected to be in that issue. And it's titled This Letter by Richard Jester. I wish we could have said it all in person, face to face. The words spontaneous, like the flow of water, sentences, more stream than syntax, punctuation, trickle and splash, tone and touch. That would have been for both of us to wash us or drown us, wherever our words have surged. Instead, I must write this letter. Where words don't flow, they coagulate, black clots on a white page. Evidence of a wound deep in the vein, of life escaping in desperate pulses. I have so much I wish I could say to you right now, Kim, and I'm sure I will always want to run to you when I write a new poem to get your opinion, and unfortunately, I will just have to write this letter. So, goodbye, Kim. I like to believe you are up in heaven, still guiding my fingers as I type, still helping me to be the best writer and the best person I can be. I'll never forget when you told me that when you were leaving Fairfield, we would always be best friends. I felt like the biggest celebrity on earth had just come down and wanted to be friends with me. There was no better compliment that somebody of your stature would want to have a friendship with me, just a student and a writer. And we did, and it was beautiful. So as I wrote in that first essay, I promise I'll never ever forget you.
Thank you, Katie and Chris, for all you do for the FUMFA writing community and for organizing this tribute to Kim Bridgford. Katie, you've been a welcoming and warm presence as you reached out to everyone participating to give instructions. I'm glad to be with you all tonight to honor Kim Bridgford. Kim was my poetry teacher at Fairfield when I was an undergrad. I took 3 independent studies with her, and I cherished the afternoons I spent with her, discussing poetry and life. Still reeling from the death of my father, it was a comfort to immerse myself joyfully in the literary journey she was certain I could travel. Under her tutelage, I was published internationally while still an undergraduate. She encouraged me, guided me, believed in my talent. I was grateful for her wisdom, and even more than that, I simply loved being in her company. I admired how smart she was, how gifted, how hardworking and dedicated. After I graduated, we kept in touch over the years, and collaborated on various poetry projects. It was a joy to be under her tutelage once more at Ender's Island as part of the first cohort of Fairfield's MFA program. While writing what would become my first full-length book, The Clock of the Long Now, I met with Kim and showed her the draft of a poem making use of a poetic form I had just invented. I called it a mirror sonnet. I was nervous. I was sitting before such a master of form. I didn't know what to expect because she was always so honest. And after a silence, she beamed at me and said, "This is an innovative gift to formal poetry. I'm proud of you." And that belief gave me the confidence I needed and filled my heart with such joy that the woman who walked on water for me poetically was proud of me. We had great poetry adventures together when I was a student, and after that, adventures as friends. One of my most precious memories was that when I married my husband, Mark, I asked Kim to give a poetry reading at the reception. And she honored us with an original poem. After it, Kim and I spontaneously danced together to Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And the moment was captured in an unforgettable wedding photograph that I still treasure. I also feel compelled to share that throughout the years, over our many conversations and collaborations, I felt like I watched Kim's talented son, Nick, grow up before my eyes through her doting stories of him. There was never a phone call without a Nick story. From the time he was a precocious little guy coming into her office, asking if she was ready to play a game with him, to his many brilliant successes in school, to his passion for film. To know Kim was to know how much she adored her son, Nick. He is her legacy to the world. I think of Nick so often now because I know and understand personally how hard it is to lose a parent young. But Nick is Kim's dearest love, her living poem, and I hope he takes comfort in that. May God bless him and give him strength for his journey. Now I'd like to share Kim Bridgford's poem, Seasons, which I had the honor of publishing in my journal String Poet in the very first issue. Seasons. The seasons are ensnared with suffering. It's hard to speak of one without the other. There are those who can be caught on just one thing and feel the pull and tug of choke and tether. Yet once the fallen world is reimagined, there is grace. The seasons are a cycle where that moment that is genuflected, keened, the bitter-tongued unfairness of debacle, undoes the origami of its frond and supplicates the edges of beyond. The seasons have an archetypal plot, like us, and from the garden in our lot, the soul inside the envelope of human. The word was made to open and illumine. Brilliant poem. Now I'd like to share the poem I wrote in memory of Kim Bridgford. Mysterium. The night I got the news, I couldn't sleep. Unthinkable you weren't in the world. I kept a morning vigil in the deep, within my heart's four-chambered rose, and curled within each smallest petal of it, grief. You've journeyed forth in the eternal poem, foreshadowed in your work. The merest leaf of heaven outshines earth's most gracious home, and I imagine how your poet's heart must thrill to the mysterium you've found. And yet, I wish you didn't have to part. Not yet. From earth's fond pilgrimage, the ground, the way you flew away was like a star. The star you are, brilliant, beautiful, far. When I finished this poem, I was, of course, deeply emotional. And as I read it back and was content with it, feeling I had said what I needed to say, I smiled as I remembered a moment with Kim from our days at Ender's Island. It was a day we were sitting together over tea, and she made me laugh. I'll share this story with you. You know, Kim was brilliant, but she was also, as those who knew her well found out, witty. She loved to tell the story that she had done stand-up comedy back in college. She'd point out that no one expected a female poet to be funny. We were supposed to be intense all the time. One of the things I enjoyed most in my friendship with Kim was that we could make each other laugh while being intense about poetry. This one particular day, as she sipped her tea, she said offhandedly that every poet has favorite words they use again and again in poems. I have some, she admitted, and you do too. We all do. Really? I replied. I couldn't think of anything like that in my work. Without blinking, she answered, oh yes, for you it's the word petal. And you also like the word bold. And then she started referencing specific poems of mine in great detail from memory that made use of those words. I started belly laughing before I could help it. She was right. Well, what do you think after I finished my tribute poem for Kim Bridgford? In my grief, I stepped back for a moment and saw, right smack in the middle of my metaphor, the word petal. I was overcome with the memory of her smile, and the word she had teased me over seemed like her stamp of approval on the poem I like to think does her justice. I truly believe, as my poem states, that Kim has journeyed forth in the eternal poem, foreshadowed in her work. May perpetual light shine upon her, and may she rest in peace. God bless Kim Bridgford.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. I had to go into my car because my internet wasn't working because there's a terrible storm. And it's interesting because when I found out that Kim was ill, I was in my car and I pulled over immediately and I was crying, so I feel as though it's appropriate. I also that day read her poem, Spoils, so I wanted to start with that. Some really sad things happened. We went on. We always like to think we were our best. Sometimes we only see things later on. The vicious bullying we didn't comment on. We were sidetracked with the personal we confessed. Some really sad things happened. We went on. On a certain level, when we peeked to watch it happen, it was satisfying, good, like being kissed. Sometimes we only see things later on. The way she was always kind to us. When she was broken, we didn't realize we had regressed. Some really sad things happened. We went on. It was best she went away, a myth unspoken. Her husband's heart attack made us feel lost. Sometimes we only see things later on. But prefer these thoughts remain in contemplation. We want the spoils, but do not want the cost. Some really sad things happened. We went on. Sometimes we only see things later on. I was a student of Kim's. I'm Laura, by the way, an undergrad at Fairfield University. And I wrote a little reflection that I'm going to read, but one thing I remember about Kim is a lot of students would take her class thinking it was going having not known anything about her, thinking it was going to be very easy, having this idea that poetry was easy, and they'd be very shocked when Kim would grade them according to the lack of effort they put in to their work, and really, of course, praised and brought forward the hard work of students who were engaged in poetry. So I'll just read this reflection that I wrote. As a first-year student at Fairfield University, I was in the pre-med program. At midterm, in the fall, I wrote the entirety of T.S. Eliot's The Love Poem of J. Alfred Prufrock in my exam book. Soon after this, I found Kim Bridgford. In her workshops, she defended my radical feminist voice to male students who would look puzzled about my rage. In her office, she called me a poet, the first to do so. She told me I was a creative person, that others might be jealous of that, to never let them drain me. When I was wandering the wide world studying abroad, she sent me an email that I had won the English Department Poetry Award. Thin of spirit and missing home, she made me feel like a somebody. Kim's poise, cleverness, wisdom, and complete devotion to poetry provided a blueprint for what I had once believed to be an impossible life. I am an English professor today because I was given a map of tender data from our beloved mentor. As a formalist poet, she still embraced my abstract confessional style. She gave me copies of Adrienne Rich and made me fall for Sylvia Plath, reminding me of the good and gracious company we keep as poets. Over a break from school, I wrote the lines of a poem she gave to me on my bedroom wall in black paint. Her own line about Frank Lloyd Wright living inside his dream influenced a major concept in my doctoral research. Though we had been apart for many years, the house was built because of her carefully laid plans. Kim's power caused her to face adversity from little men in the literary world. She never flinched. She grew more powerful in a quiet and relentless garden. A few years ago, she invited me to come to Poetry by the Sea, her brainchild, and we were able to reconnect. I was happy to see her legacy of care and mentorship continue. The students there were in awe of her, as we had been, and more importantly, in awe of poetry. I saw her in 2016 in LA at AWP when my book first came out. She nodded and said, of course, with the kind of love and support only a teacher of such integrity can produce. Though I hate conferences, how glad I am that we were both there. She wrote letters of recommendation for me, including the one that got me into my PhD program. Admittedly, I was hoping to follow along her path, but her shoes are not easily filled. I will walk nonetheless with all she gave to me into each classroom and each poem. It's true that Kim is gone. We loved her, we love her, and there will never be another. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally Nacker, and I just want to say, blessings to all of you. It's so touching, and you're all just really marvelous people. I wrote a letter to Kim today, so I'm just going to read that because that best describes my relationship with her, how I knew her, and what it meant to me. Dear Kim, I first introduced myself to you by way of a submission to Mezzo-Cammin in August of 2013. I graduated that year from the MFA program in creative writing at Fairfield University. Although I knew you had taught in the MFA program, you left before I arrived. I found you by researching journals to which to send formalist poetry, which I had just begun writing. You accepted the 2 poems I had sent you in 2013, and throughout the years accepted every submission of mine. In 2015, you recommended Kelsey Books as the publisher for my first book, and on its acceptance wrote the blurb and invited me to be a featured poet with it on a new books panel at your inaugural Poetry by the Sea. Afterwards, to give back, I asked you if I could host a new books panel at the 2016 conference. You said you'd be delighted and sent me a card later thanking me, wishing me a summer filled with new poems, and that you enjoyed having lunch with me. Every year since, except for 2019 when I could not get away, I have been hosting a new books panel at your conference, something I hope to continue to do in order to honor you. In April 2015, you kindly invited me to a Mezzo-Camine gathering at AWP in Minneapolis, which is the first time I met you in person. I was honored and thrilled. You warmly included me and my friend Leslie Schultz in a small gathering where I met poets Julie Kane and Linda Stern. I am just trying to illustrate how, as a poet who in 2013 was just beginning to publish, from our first encounter through a mere submission to your magazine, you welcomed me. It meant a great deal to me, always, your kind attention. You were accomplished, bright, brilliant, yet you remained open, warm, and you were always kind. I felt rather shy around you. Nothing to do with you, it was just me being shy, and my wish is now that I could have gotten to really know you over the years. It is just now, for example, after you have passed, that I see you were a Midwesterner like me. You were from Illinois. I'm from Wisconsin. We both have our undergraduate degrees from the University of Iowa. Through the many emails we have exchanged, I will always have your kindest words. In your vocabulary, Kim, the words warmly, delighted, lovely, and kind stand out. When my dad died, you said I was in your heart and prayers. In the latest mail from you, on June 16th, you expressed how much you missed dear John Tribble, who devoted his life to the arts. Yes, and now we miss you too. One year to the conference, Kim, I brought you peonies. Remember? They opened overnight. I'd like to now read a poem to you, Marianne Moore, simply because I find it delightful. This is poem Marianne Moore by Kim Bridgford. It's hard to get to know you, Marianne. You shield yourself with animals and fish, with facts, with words that dangle with a hyphen, the stanzas antiquarian and brash. And yet I love your eccentricities. You're like an aunt who knows just how to please, but keeps her secrets locked up in a drawer. Who says confession's what a poem is for? Imaginary gardens with real toads. Your poems are real, but not reality. Like lions built in stone to speak of creeds live ones can't know. Your quirks are legendary. The Brooklyn Dodgers, your lovely tricorn hat. Is it fair to ask for any more than that? Godspeed, Kim. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicole Caruso Garcia. I'm honored and humbled to currently serve on the advisory board of Poetry by the Sea, the conference Kim founded and directed. When I say I loved her with all my heart, her spirit will be with me always. If I seem overly fond of her, have a cult-like devotion, think she is beyond reproach, feel fiercely loyal, it is rooted in deep gratitude for her kindness, guidance, support, and belief. I met Kim when I was about 19 in undergrad, before what would become a very dire time in my life. It was as if an angel had appeared, although she might not have been aware of it at the time, but a few years back, I told her so. The career aptitude test in high school said I should have been a forensic scientist. I didn't much like English. Yet in college, a friend of mine said I absolutely had to take Dr. Bridgford's class. And so one day I found myself before registration ranting and raving in the English department office to the secretary saying, "Oh, I need a good lottery number so I can take this class." And I was, singing the praises that my friend had sung about Dr. Bridgford. And the secretary said, "Have you ever met Dr. Bridgford?" I said, "No." She said, "She's standing right behind you." So I turned around. I said, "Well, hello, nice to meet you." So in college, when in Kim's poetry workshops, she selected examples to share, I marveled at how those poets managed to convey the ineffable. Sharon Olds, Anne Sexton, their poems shone like little miracles. This was possible. I was willing to gamble that if I worked hard enough at the craft, I too might be able to say the unutterable. And I was hoping that one day, in the way that she had signed so many books for me, of hers, that I would be able to sign my book for her. But at this point, it's just a manuscript. So instead, the dedication page will say, "In memory of Kim Bridgford." And I was so fortunate to have a poetry workshop with her and also do independent study with her. Kim read my fledgling poems and somehow saw something in them worth cultivating. She didn't judge me for what was in them, and she also didn't tell me they were wonderful when they weren't. That honesty was the respect I needed. For years, I thought that I was fond of her because she gave me encouragement. I later realized it's more than that. She gave me my dignity. You never had more human dignity than when you were in Kim's presence. She was the most Christ-like person I ever knew. I tried to find solace this week by surrounding myself with Kim's books. And I thought to myself, how can anyone so talented have been so incredibly humble? And as I poured through her books, a tribute poem started to manifest. It's meant to be read as a conversation between the speaker, who could be me or perhaps many of you, and Kim herself. It's the only poem I will be sharing tonight because it is a found poem, and so every word is Kim's, including the title. Spanning all her books, the poem is built solely from individual lines from 60 of Kim's poems, one for each year of her beautiful life. There is no more than one line taken from any given poem, with the exception of one which was just too beautiful not to include. I offer this poem with love and admiration and as a testament to the universality of Kim's voice. It is called "The Year That Sorrow Shook Me by the Cuff." You wanted to create, to be like God. And if the story strained, you said, tell it. I was in love with all of them. The way that words in all their rawness burn. The way a text will flare and start to catch. You seemed to know the most about the dark. For books sewn up with thread or death's kind face, and through a piece of chalk made knowledge gleam. Poets and believers know, of course, there will be snakes around fruit. There are ways to keep women from the table. It was the easiest thing to blame an Eve. And yet, when women start to write their poems with the taste of sex and nerve and milk and honey, There's the moment of true confession, relentless as the skull beneath the face. A quavering sonnet, the truth of someone's life. We should be sharing as we seize the day, guide others through their opportunities. The family tree of sisters, and each branch like friendship that is offered by the yard. You were the light around which people gathered. You never thought the absence would be you. I felt that I could live forever, the calendar unthinkable as snow. The poet's carpe diem attitude, we have to take a risk or risk our death. And this is what I think when I'm afraid. Like a statue in the thick of what's grown wild. So many die in life and do not tell you. You pulled me up. The not seen was now seen. The breathlessness of what is possible. A prisoner of mortality and bone, unfairness licks your face with its bitter and hungry tongue. There are things I would have liked to have done. When everything you did for us. Is it fair to ask for any more than that? The Eden you had left us, leaf by leaf? I feel that I was born to do this duty. You can forget it was not easy at all. When love can't heal you fast enough, what is deserved gets lost in desert sand, the angels unfathomable as a lost language. I know you love me. Never did I doubt. The grave is no deterrent to a kiss. Where mourners kiss the kirtles of their fear, and the children bow their pretty heads, don't give me pity, but the surest way. The heaven stares to the miraculous. While faith is sturdy with the infinite, how often does your heart feel sad like this? I am. I am myself, but made anew. I heard him call my name, and then I rose to walk the starry beaches of the sky. In death, how could you be so eloquent? And like a radio that picks up song, this or that flat stone flung in a dew, made all the words line up and mourn for you.
Hi. Can anyone see or hear me? It's a strange experience with my computer. Okay, I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. Can you hear me?
We can hear and see you, Wendy. You're all set.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie and Chris. This has been an amazingly moving experience for me, listening to Kim's students. I didn't know any of you. Maybe I met some of you in January. I live in New York. I co-host the Carmine Street Metrical Poetry Reading Series. And Kim is featured many times, and she featured for us in January of this year. And my main connection with Kim has been as a poet. I attended Poetry by the Sea. I became a recidivist contributor to the timeline, the Mezzo Commune Women Poet timeline. And I've been very honored to have some of my work published in the Mezzo Commune Journal. So it's easy to see what all these things have in common. Kim, with her incredible vision, and more than that, her amazing ability to institutionalize social change and progress. Founded all of them, and I've always admired her so much for that. And never more so than recently, when we see the Black Lives Matter movement and people in the streets, and the question comes up again: how do you harness that power and transform it into something enduring? And Kim knew how to do that. And part of the reason Kim knew how to do that, which I think everything I've heard tonight from her students has attested to and confirmed, was her, her spirit, her basic kindness, and her amazing ability to propel people and inspire them and enable them, as well as her obvious commitment to enabling women poets and poets of color. So I have a few poems I was going to read. The first one is actually by Patrick Phillips. Some of you may know, this is his most famous poem. It's called Heaven. He's at least twice been featured at the Poetry by the Sea conference. And here's that poem, Heaven. It will be the past, and we'll live there together, not as it was to live, but as it is remembered. It will be the past, we'll all go back together, everyone we ever loved and lost and must remember. It will be the past, and it will last forever. This is a poem that I wrote for tonight to Kim, to praise a great woman, strongest in her deeds, editor, poet, teacher, pioneer, founder of the future. She succeeds despite the odds, despite the shrug, the sneer. As little minds defend the status quo, she implements her vision, even so. How many other lives did your life change? How many students moved to poetry? How many poets build community? How many more, once lost to history, now resurrected from obscurity? Kim, you gave as much as anyone could give, and most of all, you showed us how to live. And I'll leave you with Kim's words. This is a poem called Lazarus, from That Stillness. It was reprinted in the Umbrella Journal, and that's archived online. If you look up Umbrella Journal, it's the summer-fall 2012 issue. The editor is Kate Bernadette Benedict, who was another co-host of Carmine Street Metrics. And in 2012, she was also the founder and editor of Umbrella Journal. And there's a section in the journal, that issue, called Carmine Street Metrics and Encore. What she did was invite everyone who had featured for Carmine Street Metrics to submit a poem that they wanted included in the issue. And this is the poem that Kim chose to include. Lazarus. Later, it was difficult for me, for how do you explain to anyone the line that stands between mortality and death? At night sometimes, as I drink wine, I'd sit in silence, dreaming myself back to nothing. And after a while, I could do it, become the cave I lay in. And with luck, sometimes I could go further when I knew it again. For just a moment, I would float within the darkness made of birth and death. When morning came, I'd tremble when I ate, but then the world came back and I could breathe. I knew inside the body was the soul, that stillness in the middle of it all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for being here tonight. And thanks, Katie, for all your hard work organizing this. Being down in North Carolina, this really means a lot to me that I can still participate in this. I was really, really taken aback when I learned the news of Kim's death. She was, you guys know, she was amazing. I feel really fortunate, that a couple days before she passed, I was able to get a text message to her and just thank her. She didn't get to read it, but my third book's coming out this year, and I told her that none of that would have been possible without her. Before I go on, I feel like a disclaimer is needed here. So, we all know Kim was brilliant. I was going through some old workshop stuff because I'm a pack rat, aka poet, and I save everything. And going through the feedback from my very first workshop on Ender's Island. She had a lot of comments on my stuff, like shape matters here, and content and form. And then I found from a different workshop, I'm not sure who it was. Their feedback wasn't on there, but it says, Kim Bridgford for Sestinas. Feedback on some of my work. And, form was not my thing. So in digging through my computer this week, looking for things, I found this clearly written at a residency poem called Confessions of an Anti-Formalist. And it's not just the exercise. It's the idea of applying structure to a life that's in chaos and thoughts that are all over the place. But in a situation like this, the thoughts aren't just all over the place. They're cyclical, which sucks because it means writing a sestina. And that's what I think about when I think about Kim. She's this titan of form, and I do not do a lot of formal poetry. But she once said, I value beauty above all in poetry. I have always thought that to have a poem called beautiful was the highest praise. And she also stressed emotion and surprise and imagery along with form and beauty. And beauty was one that I thought would be hard for me because, in the time when I was working with Kim, so much of my work was about war, and she helped teach me how to draw the beauty out of war. I think that was one of her greatest talents. Her poems about suicide just speak so much to me. Kim knew all of the darkness in me. And she didn't run, she nourished me. My very first residency in the Fairfield MFA program, I was waiting to find out if I was going to be called back up to active duty and redeployed to Afghanistan. And I remember that workshop, some of you were in it, and I felt terrible because I had to leave my phone on because I was waiting for this call from some general in DC. And Kim was leading it, and we were in the basement of the main building at Enders, and half of us had our allergies being driven crazy, and it was cold and dank down there. But she just filled that room with light. And when that phone call came in, I went upstairs and outside and took it. And when I came back down, she hadn't restarted the workshop like I had expected to. I thought I would just step away. Instead, she and everyone who was in that workshop group was waiting. People who I'd only met the day before to find out what was going to happen to my life. And that's who Kim was. The summer of my divorce, Kim invited me down to Poetry by the Sea. You know, it's like she had this sixth sense. Well, she had way more than six senses. I think we all know that. But it's like she had this sixth sense for recognizing pain in others and knowing exactly what it takes to remove it. And that's what she did in her writing, and that's what she did in her life. And, you know, she taught me to focus on the beauty more than anything, even when it was challenging. And yes, she taught me that sometimes form is necessary, and I have written several sesquinas and a couple of sonnets, and you know, I think the big thing that she emphasized too was surprise, and that's, you know, something that I'm able to use formalism to surprise my readers, because it is unexpected, but it's so important when necessary. So I've just got a couple of Kim's poems that I want to share. The Wizard of Oz. It's the story of our longing. Kansas to Oz, immediate friendships on the road. The evil recognizable that haunts us. Want a brain? It's yours. Whatever the need, you take the path laid out in yellow bricks, and if the end turns out to be a sham, confront it. And there's something you can fix. Oh, Dorothy, sick of your life and wanting home, adventurous with Toto at your side, who wouldn't want a chance to take a walk with ruby slippers? Some might find it odd. Your first refusal of the shoes might mock your act as strangely disingenuous, when everything you did for us. Why Sisyphus isn't a woman. Because it wouldn't be mythological, just life. What woman hasn't pushed a rock or 2 or 10? It's not an obstacle, but a way of navigating. No shock. Instead, it's the efficient way to push while also writing a book or raising a child, because no one would be interested in it. Because if it weren't a boulder but a system rigged to keep her back, and she weren't a lamb, we would see the wrongness festered in it. Because this Sisyphus complained too much and drove the other heroes almost wild. Because when you change what's most obvious, the central figure, it is away from us. And I'll close with a poem that Kim wrote for Jamie Hulley, who was also lost to cancer. But going back and rereading it, it just seems so perfect for this moment. This is Kim Bridgford's The Artist. You wanted to create, to be like God, to shape a vision out of swirling cloud, to raise the atoms up and lovely eaves, to write the sunlight falling on the leaves, the place where possibility can stir, the tremulous unfolding of the air, the narratives that come from paradise. And when you died, we saw through your own eyes the paradox of the unreached for fruit. The vision of what was and what was not, unraveling like knowledge from the trees. In loss is also metamorphosis. We saw in a reversal from our grief the Eden you had left us, leaf by leaf. Thank you for everything.
Hi, I'm Barbara Crooker. I want to say I was so moved by everybody else's presentations, and those of you who got to study with Kim, you were so lucky. I have not had the opportunity in my life actually to take a study with anyone. I don't have a mentor, but Kim did a tremendous amount of things for me and my work. My spot, as it were, in the poetry world has just been an outsider. My main job is that I'm the full-time caregiver of my son who has autism. So I'm not an academic, but all those years I've been writing and publishing, and Kim noticed me. It went back to, we were part of the women's poetry listserv, WAMPO. And so she invited me to the Westchester Conference to be part of the Symposium on Forgotten Women Formalists. And let me tell you, that really stretched me to do those papers. And that symposium birthed Mezzo Cammin, and then that birthed the Timeline. The gala in DC that launched the Timeline at the Women's Museum of Art, I think that was one of the highlights of my life. And she invited me back to Westchester again to be on panels. And then she hosted, apart from the conference, a memorial reading for 9/11. And that let me meet Maria Tironi, who many years later invited me to be a co-editor with her of Italian Americana. So these little connections are the things that are really missing in my life, but Kim made some of them possible. And you know, she edited Dogwood and 821 on High. She used work of mine in those. And then she invited me to Poetry by the Sea, which I think is the best conference on earth. It was absolutely wonderful. The first year I was a spotlight reader. Last year I was on a number of panels. And this year I was supposed to teach a one-day workshop on ekphrastic poetry, which she actually invited me to do next year. And I hope that will happen. And besides all of this, she was fun to hang out with at AWP. And Charlotte's Web, I think, said this best. She was a terrific writer and a good friend. I can't think of any higher praise. So last year at Poetry by the Sea, we were both on a panel reading from Alongside We Travel, which is a collection of poetry about autism. Kim has a wonderful crown of sonnets in there about her nephew, Sam. And in this sequence, she plays with the many meanings of the word crown, both literally and metaphorically. So I'm going to read a couple of those. And Sam is her nephew. I'm not sure I said that before. A crown for Sam. I think of you as making music still, because your oxygen was cut, not dead exactly. You decided blue and impossible to believe in it and lived. You never lied or had a mask to make you better suited for this life. You were just yourself. The lion pillow pet was the one you wanted, so you routed yourself like a soldier, dragging your other one. A dog? You could make a trade while others slept, and did. Those days you were an actor, a sprite. Out of Shakespeare, born in February. Out of a pattern of normalcy, you leapt and made your own hip-hop album from Album Light. Sometimes people disappointed made you weary. This is the fifth in the crown. You stood for something just about to happen, and you went with your mother, father, brother, sister, your dress shirt, church-like expectation. People gathered under streamers there together. These were the days as well you worked so hard to find a job that you could do. That night, you loved the way your classmates, with a kindness card under the streamers and the turning light, loved you. And may I now reveal the ending? Because you won the kingship too, the crown, because you were as kind as they could be, because as representation of class and sending everyone into the world, you were their own. What every class should be made of sincerity. 7. Life moved on, and with it, so did you. You built your life skills, played your music, all with happiness, all with your patterns. No, this about life, always paradoxical and glorious. You loved your Rosie cat, but then you couldn't wait to go to class, so you worked on everything. It's this for that. It's the day by day of circumstance. Your family grew. You then had a new brother, and your elder brother became a school teacher because of you. We never know how all the influences we have affect the other. The rhapsodizing of what one day will reach there. I think of you as making music still. And Kim is making music for us still. And kindness was her currency. That's just a wonderful poem, and I'm happy. I'm sad she's gone, but I'm happy that her poems still exist in the world. I knew that she was very ill for a couple of months, and so I feel like it was I had 2 months to mourn. I knew I wanted to write something, and I wanted it to be in form because of what she did for formal poetry, which is not the majority of my poems. And the villanelle drew me, so this is a villanelle for Kim. If there was a poetry goddess, you were it. Teacher, writer, scholar, editor. When things got tough, you didn't quit. You stood your ground, did the opposite of what the other side expected. Sure, there's a poetry goddess, and you were it. You rose above the fray, the bullshit, faculty politics. How unfair then, cancer. When things got tough, you wouldn't quit. You showed us how to love with grace and wit. Keep going when it's hard, rise up, endure. If there's a poetry goddess, you were it. But now you're gone. I'm reading your obit. This wasn't something medicine could cure. Though things were rough, you didn't quit. And so our memories, sunlit, no darkness, salt air and lilacs, copper beach leaves shining. Poetry goddess, you are it. Things were tough. You never quit. And I love that poem that Wendy chose to read about heaven. I imagine heaven is poetry by the sea. So, Lux Perpetua, dear friend, we are not going to forget you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Kane, and Kim and I go back 15 years to the 2005 Westchester Poetry Conference. Off in the future, we were both going to win the Donald Justice Poetry Prize, but that was still years ahead. We were both women poets in that then very male environment, and we clicked, and it was not long after that that she asked me to write an essay for the very first issue of Mezzo Cammin, Volume 1, Issue 1, in 2006. And that was the first of many milestone events that I got to share with her, and the first of many opportunities that she made possible with her vision and energy for me in my own writing life. I was privileged to be in the very first cohort of the Mezzo Cammin Women Poets timeline that Kim led at Westchester. After she took over as conference director, she invited me to be on faculty for 2 years. And in 2014, which was the 20th anniversary year of the Westchester Poetry Conference. She chaired a panel at AWP in Seattle celebrating the conference with me, Dana Gioia, David Yezzi, and Catherine Tufariello. And then when she took over Poetry by the Sea, I just lost count of all the wonderful panels and readings and memorials for other lost friends that we shared together. Looking back over my email messages back and forth with Kim over that long period of time, I was struck by whenever she asked me to do something and I replied yes, because you can't say no to Kim, she would always shoot back at a message saying, "You made my day. You made my day," over and over. And one time, "You made my night." And I would think to myself sometimes, that's a very low threshold of day making. My threshold would be a little higher than that. But Kim meant it. She meant it. She said in one of her group messages to us, she said, "This is one of the great loves of my life, bringing community together." One time when I was doing an event in Philadelphia and I invited her to come, she wrote back to me and she said, "Well, I'll be in Bhutan for the performance, but I'll help get the word out." And that was so Kim, to be halfway around the world in Bhutan, thinking about how she can help other poets, how she can help other writers. Kim was younger than I am, but she was my role model. There are plenty of poets in this world who are smart and who are talented like Kim, but how many are patient, kind, caring, selfless, professional, graceful under pressure? There was only one. And I just wish that I had not been too embarrassed to tell her that when I had the chance. Kim, of course, loved the women poets tradition. And so I'm going to read 3 short poems about Emily Dickinson. The first one is "The Largest Paper Clip Chain" from In the Extreme. "I like to see it lap the miles," she said, and Dickinson referred here to a train. She couldn't have imagined there instead an office item in a mile-long chain of over 50,000 paper clips. But the Belle of Amherst might have been amused and fashioned 50,000 paper quips. How, like their human counterparts, they're used. Or from her solitary attic room, she'd throw this chain out like a fragile pulley to draw up ordinary circumstance and sift through what she caught to make her name. Just like her poetry, those clips could tally the way that smallness makes a difference. And from Instead of Maps, I'll read Emily Dickinson. "I think about the days she sewed her poems with threads of ink that held the sounds between the words. She put her heart down in her rhymes and understood that somewhere in the skin there is an answer for each line, a chorus that she traced within herself. Why pause right there, a student asks, as if to stress the point. The answer is in earthly laws of conversation, how to frame them so the texture of the momentary speech lasts. Think of your memory as a ragged row of utterances that you would like to reach for when you wished. Impossible. She chose to try with words, then dashes between those." And I'll close with one that is very timely right now. It's from the Nasty Women Poets Anthology, and it's called "Why Emily Dickinson Would March on Washington." Unsuffocate, release before, because some things you leave home for. with more than jam, and you are ready because sometimes a basket's heavy, because your dashes work away, because you have a door cachet, because you find you right to sow both life and death, you have to go. Thank you.
My name is Holly Brigham, and I am a visual artist, so you have an advantage over me because you guys write poetry and can read poetry very well. I met Kim in 1989, and she was at my wedding in 1990, and she married Pete, who was a dear friend of my husband in college. And Kim and I did a lot of collaboration over the years, and she would invite me to participate in anything she was doing. We were both feminists and sort of moved in circles where women were central and very important. And when she moved to Philly, that was so wonderful because we got to see each other more often. She invited me to participate in a Sylvia Plath birthday party, which I thought was just the most amazing thing, at Westchester University. And I created a little piece of artwork, and I read some of Sylvia Plath's poems. I also admire Sylvia Plath, and I went to Smith College, and so did Sylvia, so there was that connection. When Kim recently wrote her book to Sylvia and Ted, she emailed me and asked me if I could help her find a cover image because she knew that I had connections at Smith in the special collections, and Smith holds all of Sylvia Plath's papers. And so I was able to connect her, and they sent her a few images, and she chose that fabulous image. We talked about how it was a really interesting photograph because Sylvia in the picture plane is raised above Ted, and so has the place of power in that photograph. So Kim actually featured me. One of the first times my artwork was published was in Dogwood, so that was such a treat. And she published my works a number of times in Mezzo Cammin, and I had a chance to have her. I started to do artist books a few years ago, and it's actually because of Kim, because she introduced me to Marilyn Nelson, and Marilyn Nelson and I collaborated together, and we turned our collaboration into an artist book. And then the artist book, the collaboration was featured at Poetry by the Sea. So you see how it goes. It was sort of like whatever we were doing, we would try to bring the other one into it. My husband is in charge of Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts here in Philadelphia. Kim loved that place, and she would organize poetry readings and different events at the Academy. She did poetry readings at 30th Street Station. One year she was going to be doing it on St. Patrick's Day, and she knew that my daughter Flora dances Irish step dancing, and so she contacted me and said, "Hey, do you know any Irish fiddlers?" And I said, "Oh yes, and I know some dancers who could come." And so I kind of helped her pull that together with poetry. And when I did my second artist book that came out in 2018 called Mother Monument, Kim was one of 8 poets, and a number of the other poets I met through Kim. We launched the book at the Arthur Ross Gallery here in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania, and Kim was there for the the launch and read her poem. And the Mother Monument features 8 of my paintings, and for most of my career, I've used myself as the model, and I have painted myself as women artists throughout time. And so in the Mother Monument, it features 8 women artists. The last one I used a model actually, because it's Edmonia Lewis, who was an African American and Native American artist from the 19th century. And but Kim wrote her poem to go with the painting of Tamara de Lempicka, who was an Art Deco artist. And so I'd like to read that to you, because if you know, artist books are usually published in a very small edition. So there are actually 10 copies of Mother Monument, but it has landed in very nice places. It's at the Smithsonian and the National Museum of Women in the Arts, where Kim launched her pencil queen, and it's also at the Georgia Museum of Art and some other great collections. But I'd like to read it to you because it's something that probably hasn't been seen a lot or heard a lot. So it's called Tamara de Lempicka. So remember that it's a painting of myself in the guise of this particular artist. So in the poem, it's interesting because I think she's talking about me as well as the artist. It's very interesting. This is you and not you, just as the sonnet is both the subject and the poet in it. Hand me the bracelet, silvered, wide, and jeweled, and the scarf pin glimmering, and the goggles retooled. Look, no hands, this flying is an art, most difficult when it almost comes apart. Excuse me. Flying is a metaphor for women's balance when managing their lives and public talents. Look again, you are the subject and the pilot, and the artist who has drawn herself in violet. This is empathy and self-identification, the last step in a real education. It's the eyes in the end that catch you up, your eyes reflecting out of history's cup. Last year, I emailed Kim and I said, hey, Kim, I'm doing really well with these artist books. I think I'm going to do a third one, and I was wondering if you would be the poet. And she immediately said yes. The artist book is not complete yet. All of Kim's poems are. She wrote many poems. She sent them to me and she said, choose the ones you like. And let me know if you need more. And she's just amazing, just so prolific, and it just came so easily to her. The book is called I Wake Again, which she hadn't heard the title. The subject is Elizabeth Siddall, who was a pre-Raphaelite artist in the middle of the 19th century in England, and she was also a poet, and she was a model, and she's mainly known as being the model for that very famous Ophelia painting, which you may know, and by Moseley. And I wanted to use her as a subject to show people that she was much more than a muse or a model, that she was a talented artist and also a writer. And so Kim wrote 12 poems to go with my drawings in the book. And anyway, I want to read one of those to you. The poem is called The Best Day. If I were to say the best day, I'd say this. It all would be before the moment that I knew that change was coming. Like bliss, like the bliss, the shadows, stories when you know they're not what they could be. That was my best as well. Not terror, but the anticipated miracle. I knew that that would be my dark entree into the world. That's how I am, this way, of someone approaching on a lost day. Everything spent, probably, and also gone. See that color on the green? The way it's looking for you for something again. That could have been me walking quickly along, alert to the soft tune of remembered song. Thank you very much for letting me participate in this event today. It's been very nice.
Thank you so much, Holly. And Chris?
Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. We had, I believe, 13 incredible readers and speakers tonight, all sharing just these incredible stories about Kim that even though I wasn't in them, I recognized her and I could see her and I could feel her. And it was so beautiful. And I was touched and I laughed, and it was beautiful to feel and remember her spirit with us tonight. And Chris, I don't know if you wanted to share anything before I just close it out. Just say another thank you to everyone.
I didn't have the pleasure of working with Kim. Of course, I knew her from our times at Ender's Island, and loved hanging out with her for breakfast, lunch, and/or dinner. Seeing her around the island, she was the most positive and supportive person there, without really knowing much of my work at all. She was just so supportive, and I'm so happy that she was able to help so many people as a mentor and friend. And I wish I was a poet so I could have worked with her. That's the only time you'll ever hear me say that.
That's high praise, Chris, coming from you. That's very funny. Thank you so much, Chris.
Katie.
I just want to mention the names of our speakers again and just thank them so much. Big thank you for Anna Evans, Molly Mellinger, April Booker, Annabelle Moseley, Laura Marie Marciano, Sally Nacker, Nicole Caruso Garcia, Wendy Sloan, Colin Halloran, Barbara Crooker, Julie Kane, and Holly Brigham. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us in our audience and viewing this, and for everyone who's going to view it after. Thank you for remembering Kim with us, celebrating her incredible work and legacy. Follow our Facebook page for the things that we do. And also Molly Mellinger and I have created a Facebook page called Remembering and Celebrating Kim Bridgford. Please feel free to share photos, poems, events, anything on there with the larger community of people who love Kim. Also, please don't forget about Poetry by the Sea. Kim had asked that I saw on her obituary that in lieu of flowers, there was a request for donations to Poetry by the Sea, and that would help to continue her work for the conference that she founded. So you might consider that. And, before we go, I have, since we do have an extra moment, I'd love to just share one of my own poems that kind of speaks to the connection between us, and that a connection of love is never lost. And even if someone has passed, even if someone is far away, we're never really disconnected. This poem is called I will be with you always. And it sort of echoes the last words of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew. Look, I said, I will be with you always until the world we know melts away. In every moment, when you know and when you don't. From now until the deafening light, even if you don't see me, you'll be in me behind my eyes. Look, I said, I will be here even if you are not. This promise is every particle, every wave. It binds us across oceans of difference and pain. Look, I said, this love is forever, and it is with you, and I am with you always. I hope that we can gather around in community and share together and support each other. Kim, we love you, and we hope you're listening and feeling all the love from wherever you are. We wish you all a good night, and much love to you too.
Good night.
Good night.